Hi, my name is Kassua. I'm a second-year Dinos athlete for swimming. I'm a member of the Ross River Denna Council. I'm from the Ross River and Pelly Banks area in the Yukon. I've been involved in sport for a long time. I started sports when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and my parents made sure to put me into a lot of sports. Swimming has always been one of them, along with soccer, gymnastics, Highland dancing at some point, and figure skating. My parents made sure to put me into swimming from a young age because they wanted to make sure that I was able to swim so that I wouldn't drown. And swimming has always kind of been on the back burner, especially when I was younger. I was really into figure skating. My dad really wanted hockey players, and my parents kind of argued about it, and they found middle ground with figure skating, and I really loved it. And then when I was around 10 years old, the hockey rink ended up catching fire and it was closed for the year. And that's when swimming really took off for me. And coming back from that, my figure skating and swimming time started to conflict with each other. And that's when I eventually chose swimming over figure skating. Well, especially in the Yukon, it's a very small community, and I grew up with my friends on the swim team, and it had always been like a safe place for me, and I had lots of friends there that I was able to see every day, and swimming was a low-impact sport that I really enjoyed, and it helped me through really tough times. So when I was young, my parents made the decision to move to Whitehorse semi-permanently throughout the year. I'd return periodically to my community for spring, winter, and summer breaks. But throughout the scholastic year, I was in Whitehorse competing for the Whitehorse Glacier Bears. And growing up outside of the community was really tough, and sometimes I feel disconnected from my culture and family, but those were the sacrifices that I had to make it to such a high level in swimming. I'm incredibly grateful to my family for all the sacrifices that they've made for my brother and I to reach the level of swimming that we have. We could not have done it alone, and we could not have done it without them. As soon as they saw potential in my swimming career, they did everything that they could to make sure that I got enough training, enough rest, help with school. They made sure that I had all the resources to succeed, and I do realize that that's a privilege, and I'm incredibly grateful for them. When we moved to Kelowna, I was nervous and excited. I'd never lived in a city that big before, so it was quite the big change. And the transition wasn't easy. When I first moved there, I went to a predominantly non-Indigenous school, and I had lots of difficulties making connections with people there because growing up in a remote community and territory and then going to a city, it was quite the change. However, for swimming, it really launched my swimming career and gave me opportunities that I otherwise would not have been able to receive in the Yukon. And I was able to train in an Olympic-sized pool for the first time, and the coaches there were amazing and gave insight that I hadn't gotten before in the territory. Yeah, swimming is an automatic family. Swimming is a very tough sport, and so everyone who's reached that level, they know that all the sacrifices and hard work that is put behind the sport, and it really connects all of us. And in Kelowna, it really helped me stay grounded when times were tough, especially at school, because there wasn't a lot of Indigenous support there at the time. So because of COVID, I wasn't able to swim for 2 years, and I wasn't aware that I was actually fast enough to swim at university, and I didn't even know what U-Sport times were. So our first competition back was in December 2022, And yeah, I had an incredible meet. I made, I think, 4 U Sport times, and after that week, I was contacted by a couple universities, and luckily my swim coach, he had connections with the Dinos, and I asked him to put in a good word for me, and yeah, we went through the whole recruiting process, and I swim with the Dinos now. Currently, I'm studying International Indigenous Studies. Eventually, I'd like to take Indigenous law and then work in environmental law. That was my second time going to NAG. I'm incredibly grateful that I was eligible to compete in my second games. Because of COVID, the games were postponed for 6 years, I believe, and a lot of athletes during that time aged out of the competing age and weren't able to swim. So I'm very grateful that I was able to compete a second time. You can imagine there's a lot of Indigenous athletes coming together from all over the world. It's an international competition, so there were kids from New Mexico, Florida, Wisconsin, from the United States. So it was really cool to meet all these other Indigenous athletes, because we can share being an Indigenous athlete with each other. And it's not something that you come across in your day-to-day life. University, I haven't met a lot of Indigenous athletes, let alone swimmers. So it was truly incredible to meet so many others who share the same sport and interests that I do. It's truly amazing. Truth and reconciliation is incredibly important to Indigenous peoples because they've been through a lot, losing culture, languages, relationships to families. And truth and reconciliation is an act of reconciling with Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have endured a lot of pain, and most of them ask for recognition and the understanding of what happened to Indigenous peoples of the past. There's a lot of non-Indigenous people who have the mindset of, well, I didn't do residential schools, why should I learn about them? Or why should I care to apologize for something I never did? I think it's important to realize that the history of Canada and how Canada became a country heavily affected the Indigenous peoples that lived there beforehand. And to build a healthy relationship with them is to recognize the past, to validate Indigenous peoples and their feelings about what happened in the past, and not to push them aside and to say, you should get over with it. It happened a long time ago, because residential schools were very recent and it affects many families. Every single Indigenous person you will meet today has been touched by residential school in one way or another, whether they attended themselves or through intergenerational trauma. And to put actions behind truth and reconciliation eventually, to go walk forward and advocate for change and for the future, so that Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples can have a better relationship with each other. It means a lot to me to be an Indigenous athlete competing at youth sports. Where I'm from, a lot of us don't make it to the university stage. And so competing at such a high level in my sport means a lot to me, and to know that my entire community back home is supporting me and cheering me on, it means the world to me, and I'm just incredibly proud to stand behind those blocks and to race my heart out.